Here we go. Hey everyone, super excited to have you here with us today. We've got Russell Tassin, one of the best Chaos Space Marine players out there. And we're here to talk about this new data slate change and what it means for Chaos Space Marines and Chaos in general. Russell, how are you doing today?
Doing great.
Great. Well, I think you're doing especially great after seeing that data slate change. I have to say, it was funny when it first came out. Like my reaction was like, I mean, this is massive for Chaos. And then I feel like a lot of initial reaction was like, oh, we didn't get the second wound, stuff like that. I get the frustration of Chaos Space Marine fans, but I mean, man, this was a huge change. Like, how much do you think this shakes things up in terms of which legions are the best?
Like we've discussed before, Emperor's Children was already good. This just makes them, I think it makes them an A tier list, to be honest, especially if you're running Terminators, which have 2 wounds. And they're only 28 points with double lightning claws. And then you also have Possessed, which are 2 wounds and 20 points model, which is like an assault intercessor, but better. So, I mean, when you get down to it, yeah, the regular CSM troop choice, they don't have 2 wounds, but the things that do have 2 wounds aren't expensive.
Yeah.
And they gain so much from this FAQ.
Oh, absolutely. So just a quick overview for people that missed it. Basically, the main change is death to false emperors now. Death to everyone, let the galaxy burn. Everyone gets unmodified 6s to hit that are exploding. But one of the main synergies is that any Slaanesh unit, well, not Warp Talons, but basically any Slaanesh infantry unit can take an Icon of Excess, which gives them 5-up death to false emperor. Russell, I have to say, something I find really funny is that, Khorne's kind of the god of melee, should be the big scary one. It feels like all edition, like Slaanesh has actually been better for melee units, which is, I know some World Leader fans aren't super happy with that. Yeah, I think Emperor's Children, as you're saying, looking way better. They're already pretty darn good, and now they're just elevated to the entire next level. What are some other legions? Because I know you're famous as a Black Legion guy. I know you mentioned you got through the Black Legion series, those amazing books we all fell in love with. How do you think Black Legion are looking now?
So similar, I mean, you could do a lot with Possessed and even Chaos Bikes with chain swords and things like that. But the main thing is Abaddon, which I love playing against Imperium because 5-up death to the false emperor. And I think one thing a lot of people miss on death to the false emperor, especially when you have somebody like Abaddon that just gives a natural 5-up to everyone around him, which actually is not a modifier. It's just a 5-up death to the false emperor. So you could actually add 1 to that if you have add 1 to hit rolls or prescience or something like that. But one thing that you can do with Abaddon and everybody around him is it's reroll all hits. So what you do is, and what I do with Abaddon, every time I attack with him when I'm fighting Imperium, I re-roll everything that's not a 5 or 6, especially since he's sitting on 2s. And I always get a lot of attacks. So if I get say an average Dracnian, 3 attacks, and then you add that to his base of 6 and 7. So now you're looking at 10 attacks, 33% of those on the first roll are going to explode. And now, I'm looking at 66, 70% of them. So I'm looking at 17 hits. And with the new Death to the False Emperor being on everyone, I don't just get excited when I play Imperium anymore. Now I get excited when I play everybody because, Abaddon's my emergency brake, or, I use him as a force multiplier, and I never rely on him because when I do bring him out to play, it's when I'm desperate, and he always makes the difference in a game. So, and that it's usually, especially against Imperium, I can reliably take down a Knight, but I couldn't take down a Plague Burst Crawler. Well, guess what? Plague Burst Crawlers are toast now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, now everyone bleeds just as hard now.
That's right. So I'm super excited.
Yeah,
but I mean, there's so many buffs that you can do with Black Legion that I think a lot of people miss with the what we had originally gotten in Vigilus, and they just recently updated. You got +1 to hit. I mean, reroll 1s to hit, which you can do on Terminators and you can do on Bikes. You can do it on Possessed. There's add 1 to hit roll, and if you have more around it, then you get an whole extra attack. So, like for example, if you have 10 Possessed, run in and fight something, and you can give an extra attack, reroll 1s to hit, plus death to the false emperor. And Black Legion also has a stratagem that if you don't have a mark on a unit, you can give them all the marks. So, for example, you take a non-marked unit of Chaos Possessed, mark them with all 4 marks at the start of the turn, or you know what I'm saying, And if you're using, like, say, maybe some Slanesh demons to give them the advance and charge, and then, you still have the berserker or fight twice strategy as well. So, I mean, you could take 10 possessed, which are 200 points, and blow somebody's main things up real easy early on.
Yeah, so. No, it's absolutely amazing. And it's for people that haven't seen Abaddon in combat before. Like, people don't understand. Like, he's arguably better than Gilliman in combat. Like, especially again with access to the fight twice that Gilliman lost. I mean, he's really one of the premier beat sticks in the entire game.
I think he went from one of the best melee beasts in the game, and I mean, this includes the succubus and all that when it was broken.
Yeah.
To the, I think, unquestionably the best melee unit in the entire game.
Yeah. So like, people don't understand. Like right now, like with these buffs, again, you can charge like unit of Chaos Knights, especially because they don't really get invulns and they can't rotate their invulns in melee. You can have Abaddon do all of his attacks against one, and then fight again, do all his attacks in the other. Easily could kill 2 knights in a turn right now.
Oh, easily.
And that's, easily. I mean, that's for 200 some points. In addition, like basically the best auras in the game. So Black Legion are looking absolutely fantastic now. And then we'll talk about that Merciless Fighter strat, the +1 attack strat. People don't realize this, but like they can get World Eaters, or excuse me, Black Legion Berserkers hitting much harder than World Eaters Berserkers, ironically, because of the better auras and the 5-up Death of False Emperor. And the trick with that is basically you wait to pile in enough guys inside. So on the stratagems, like on paper, it sounds hard to use. In practice, just like pile in smartly. You can basically always activate it. Just a free +1 attack on a unit that's gonna be fighting twice. I mean, don't do that to people. Like that's just not nice. Like take it easy on people. You don't need to do that. And all sorts of other units. Like I think, for example, Warp Talons and Raptors were units, they hit hard, but the trade-off is they're super fragile. But I mean, even now, like a unit of Raptors, for example, again, not a great combat unit, but you can give them an Icon of excess, for the 5-up exploding hits. You give them +1 to hit. Like even a unit of Raptors now for like, it's like 90 or I think like 85 points with an Icon. They're just going to drown people in AP1 attacks. Like they'll hit a Horde unit, and that little unit of Raptors, which is like a little skirmishing unit, will just wipe out like 15, 20 models easily. I think people just need to reevaluate like just how much this means for Chaos Space Marines melee. Now, Russell, what's really interesting to me is the last time everyone basically saw your name in the 40K news, you were dominating with this all shooting, all dreadnought, some decimators, Lord of Skulls list. How would you be writing a Black Legion list these days with kind of the post FAQ world?
Oh, sorry, a little feedback. I think right now my list isn't actually going to change much, other than Abaddon being my absolute beat stick when I need it.
Yeah.
Which I mean, because the current meta I think is going to evolve with the rest of the changes. So I think one of the things is it didn't matter that it was a 1 wound infantry or 2 wound infantry thing. It was the matter of how fast infantry died. So I think as people's lists change with all this, and infantry will become more viable. So I don't think in the short term it's going to have as big as an effect as I would like, but I think over the course of the next couple of months, as the new changes set in, I think I'm going to be looking back at bikes and Terminators again. And bikes are actually something really interesting, especially with something like this.
Yeah, talk to me about bikes.
So yeah, I mean, you can take the bikes have the updated bases on them now, so they're they're pretty good size. And if you take 5 of them, you don't have to worry about the cohesion thing. So you can take that 14 inches, spread it way out, put them 3 inches of the sorcerer, and warp time them. Now you got a 28-inch move on that front bike. And with Black Legion, all those stratagems that I mentioned earlier, I mean, I did it prior to my current list, where I was, when Space Marines are real big. I was taking that and using those bikes as a missile to go in there and cream chapter masters before the game even really got started.
Yeah.
And it's just something neat to do is bikes. Toughness 5, 2 wounds, 28 points with chainswords. Yeah.
And the great thing is Chaos Space Marine players all edition have seen the power of our melee against Imperium. And it's just a lot of characters like I mean, previously I'd have things where like I would charge in, I'd see the naked succubus, or the succubus like super buffed, come in there and have like unit like Warp Talons hit it. And like they do whiff occasionally, and then that's obviously like a game losing thing. And now it's just like things we should kill, and we just have an extra layer of reliability. Like I don't know, like a chapter master equivalent for like other factions. Again, you'll send your bikes in, and now it's just so much harder to whiff now because you get the exploding sixes. Both like the reliability and the upside just got huge boosts. So Black Legion we've covered, Emperor's Children we've talked about, because I mean, again, for people that aren't aware of Emperor's Children, the full toolbox they have, the auto charges is amazing, the Slaanesh, they can all take icons is amazing. Would you agree that Emperor's Children Terminator is now like one of the very best units in the entire game?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Even at the 2 wounds, but at the price point per model,
yeah,
it's just, I think they're going to be outrageous. So
yeah, no, absolutely. Another Legion, which I think is super popular with fans, like people always ask about this one, but previously have been in a bit of a rut. Night Lords. They also have another amazing series, I think by ADV2. He's done so much for Chaos fans. But Night Lords have always, been kind of the, I want to say the little cousin to Emperor's Children, because they had the charge buffs, they had some melee buffs. It was just like strictly worse, basically. Everything was worse. Have you looked into Night Lords at all now? Because, go ahead.
Not since the points. I'd already messed around with Night Lord's list a little bit just because of all the tools that they have in their kit.
Yeah.
Just with those stratagems, and there's some real ways to shut people down from being able to move or shoot and things of that nature. So, but since the FAQ thing, I haven't messed with it too much because I really dumped a lot of thought into Emperor's Children and Black Legion. Just Emperor's Children is just it's very exciting, I think, with these changes. So it's kind of I mean, you just saw, I mean, that's why I've made 10 different Emperor's Children lists, and I'm the Black Legion guy. So
yeah. No, it's an amazing time for Emperor's Children fans.
Yeah.
I will say, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. But Night Lords has some really cool tools,
that
can utilize some of the same things that we're talking about with Emperor's Children. You might not have the Noise Marines that where you get the neg-4 on, wound rolls of 6. But I mean, you still have, if you're looking at Possessed or Terminators and things, or Warp Talons and things like that, I mean, you still have some really good options to really lay the scunion.
Yeah, no, for sure. The reason I've been looking at Night Lords more, and this is kind of hypocritical because I'm Emperor's Children player at heart, but because Night Lords have 2 stratagems to give +1 to hit in melee, which again, previously, like I've played Night Lords against Imperium and loved it, and just being able to get that same kind of strength against everyone, I think really opens up the faction, simply because most ways to get +1 to hit in Chaos Space Marines are really just honestly like prescience, I think, which is a psychic power, which is, they'll fail sometimes, they'll get denied sometimes, sometimes you fail it, you CP reroll it, you still fail it, dice be dice. But Night Lords, just 2 clean +1 to hit in melee stratagems, feels fantastic. And they do have the 3d6 charge. I feel like right now they were previously like a toolbox, but not really a whole army. I think they're that much closer. I agree with you. They're not all the way there, just because their shooting is, there's really no benefits from being Night Lords. But man, the melee feels so good right now from Night Lords. And the main reason I'm looking at them is they have a stratagem, which, as you touched on briefly, preventing fallback. And a lot of people that haven't actually like played with an army with fallback tricks before don't understand like just how impactful that can be. Because you'll have a list where you'll have like a turn where you like charge a bunch of things, they all consolidate into one thing. You prevent fallback with 1 unit there, and suddenly like they just lose an entire turn of shooting. I really think there's something there. I know you mentioned you're switching to Emperor's Children. Well, not promised, but like looking into that more. I'm looking more into Night Lords. But it's so fantastic because all sorts of units we've never looked at before, really, previously, are just now so much more interesting. Which I guess I do have to talk now about World Eaters quickly, just because people see a melee buff to Chaos Space Marines, but there's not really any excitement around World Eaters. Do you think that takes them to the next level, or do you think they're already like too good in melee? Kind of give me your thoughts on them.
I think it definitely helps them. I don't, it maybe doesn't help them as much as, somebody that can put an icon of Slaanesh on something, or have an Abaddon, but it's a straight up buff, because it's not even just Death to the False Emperor, it's exploding sixes. So when you look at how much efficiency you're going to gain just on that piece of it, mind it not being that you're able to do it on everybody, you know, a unit of berserkers, as long as you can protect them and get them there,
Yeah.
they'll kill anything. I mean, even with just neg 1 chain axes, because it's going to be so many attacks. It'll get through. It'll get through a lot, and especially since somebody will have to pay the command points to interrupt before you attack twice. You
Yeah.
know, so I mean, it's buff. It's buff no matter how you look at it. It maybe not as much, you know. And it unfortunately, Emperor's Children was already probably the top CSM chapter. So
yeah.
So this just compounds it. I mean, like we talked about that master possession trick with the warlord trait and relic. Now it's not just putting out 10 mortal wounds on a unit of Imperium. Now you can do it to a unit of 20 gaunts and just kill an entire unit of gaunts with 1 master possession.
Yeah.
Or an entire unit of anything really with 1 master possession.
Yeah. So for anyone that missed that trick, and this is, I hate saying this on camera because I don't want to tell people this because it's our best little dirty CSM trick. But the combo for Cast Space Marine players is you take a Master of Executions, give him the Flames of Spite Warlord trait, which is an unmodified 6-up a modified 6-up does additional mortal wound, which stacks with his intrinsic roll for 6-ups do mortals. And give him the Raymond Repulsive, which rerolls all hits and wounds, just a great relic. And he comes in and he does, average of 6 attacks. Now it's averaging 7 attacks because he hits on 2s rerolling with 6s exploding. And then what you do is you use vets, so then 5-ups do 2 mortal wounds, and you get a reroll efficient for 5s. Then you use excess of violence, I believe the name is, to make an additional attack for each model killed. And as you said, he'll pop knights, and he'll also go into hordes, and he'll do like, again, the second round does like 12, 13 attacks because it's based off models killed. And again, it's not like a cheesy gray area, and the rule's not a loophole. It's like very clear. The rules is written. There's no debate about this. It's nothing to do with the exploding succubus FAQ. And he'll just, again, he's our answer to Skitarii hordes. And I think Tyranids, as you're mentioning, Tyranids are very, very legit these days. You need to have an answer to hit 30 gaunts and just take them off the board. And he's just such a beautiful piece to have. And I will say, one of the good things is Emperor's Children, the warlord traits are probably the weak spot because the relics are great, the stratagems are amazing, the units are great. Warlord traits, you don't really mind just taking the generic Cast Space Marine one and popping the Flames of Spite and just, it's a beautiful, beautiful thing when it works.
And I think it reliable.
Yeah, and the great part is, again, it's not Honor the Prince doesn't just help you make deep strike charges. It's turn 4 when you have the Master of Executions and you need to reach someone. Honor the Prince, no problem. 10-inch charge late game, no problem. Very reliable, 16 or so inch threat range off this little foot guy. And just such a fantastic tool to have in your back pocket. I mean, and plus Emperor's Children, again, we've talked about melee, but the shooting remains fantastic. I mean, Noise Marines, into literally anything that's not 2-up save and -1 damage. Noise Marines shooting twice will just pick up insane amounts of value. Yeah, they're in a fantastic spot. So let's see, what other legions are missing? Word Bearers, thoughts on them? Yeah, I think the Possess trick is just strictly better now. That's fantastic. Still wouldn't recommend them as like a go-to choice, but if you're running Word Bearers before, you're feeling much better today. Only thing is, I would say if you're running Word Bearers, just switch them to Slaanesh to get the icons on there. Thank me later. Yeah, I think there's just a lot of viable legions now. Russell, one thing I really want to do was talk about a few of the main remaining really bad matchups and kind of what your approach is going into those matchups. Because I did a little note-taking before we started, and I want to get your thoughts on playing against Grey Knights, Tyranids, Drukhari, and Admech post-FAQ. So we can kind of quickly go through those matchups and kind of get maybe some tips to win that matchup or tricks that have worked for you. How does that sound?
Sounds great.
Awesome. Well, let's talk about what is probably the best army in the game right now, Grey Knights. I don't know if you, actually, I'm curious, Russell, who do you think is the best army in the game right now if you had to pick someone to win a super major?
Of course, Black.
Oh, well, obviously,
I
the
think
second best army. Drukhari still, even with the changes?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Super fair.
Yeah, there's all kinds of builds that they still have that people are going to just now mess around with, and we're going to want our old party list back.
Yeah, no, I think people that before, like, Witches stealing OPSEC was, like, little OPSEC witches all over the board, stealing primary raiders, flying over to tag your stuff was annoying. People have missed out on the pleasure of playing against Chronos and Talos with -1 damage, just advanced and charge in, shooting flamers everywhere. There's still a ton of hurt in that codex. They still have all the great tricks they had before. It's just now like the succubuses, they went, like people talk about succubuses getting nerfed. They're still amazing. At 90 some points, you can still one-shot so many things in the game, just with a combination of Relic and Warlord trait. Your previous list, the Black Legion list, again, it was beautiful because anything on the board, any Dark Elder, like any amount of raiders, you were just picking them up if you could see them. Post FAQ, I guess you only got better. Do you have any specific tips for the Drukhari matchup for Chaos Space Marine players?
Well, I think it depends on which, I keep hearing a bunch of feedback, sorry. I don't know, it depends on what Drukhari list you're playing, because if you're playing the traditional like raider list and all that, that's just a matter of it's popping them and killing them faster than they can spread out and all that stuff, because they are, they die easy to shooting. And now, with the 4 Pinbone they have in melee, getting those extra hits from Death to the False Emperor is gonna help.
Yeah.
So it's so many things it goes into. So now the Talos list and all that, I mean, that's where, -1 damage lightning claws don't really care. So but it's also getting into them. So that's where your like Night Lords, Warp Talons can really come into play, because you can drop down on some Taloses, charge in and get them there without taking the flames, So and you're getting a max efficiency because you're only doing 1 damage anyway. So now there's the other list that this is the one I'm scared of, because it's one that don't even kill you. And I know I brought it up in the past, but like Nathan Final's list, where it's just he spreads out and he's got, I think he's going from 30 units, and after the point nerf, I think he's down to like 29 units. And his list, until you play it once, until you play this list once, it's so hard to understand the concept of what he's doing, like how he just spreads out, and he doesn't care what you do other than keeping you in your deployment zone. So the only thing I can say against any of those lists is if they have the ability to take you down, like shoot you down, I think you almost have to take the risk and still get out there, because if you're not aggressive enough against Dark LR, they're just going to bury the objectives and keep you in your deployment zone, and there's no way you can win on primaries. So it doesn't matter if your models are alive or not. And I think all 3 of them, you almost have to play out and just hope that you can outkill them and outlive. That way you can score your primaries in the late game. So I thought that, like I said, even with the point nerfs, I think Drukhari still had so many other builds that are, I think, scarier than the build that we're also familiar with. The Venom build with a bunch of units, like 29, 30 units still, or the Taloses. And I honestly think that's the one we're going to see everywhere. So, and I would be willing to bet Dark LR will probably win GW Austin here this coming weekend with Talos is in the list.
Would not be surprised at all, especially because the terrain is so good for them.
Oh man.
Now, what's really interesting about that is Dark Eldar. I agree, they're still a pretty bad matchup for us, just because, again, the good news is our Death to False Emperor works off modified 6s, so we can mess with it. Downside is people can also mess with it if they have a -1 to hit. And unfortunately, lightning fast reflexes for, I think it's 1 CP, just kind of takes away any benefit we've gained. Again, there is trade-offs. Again, if you're forcing them to spend 1 CP every combat phase, that adds up, takes away other tricks they can do. It's not bad at all. It's still a strict buff. But I don't think it changes the matchup that much. Especially because they still have this, I don't understand why GW did this. They still have like a 1 CP stratagem to reroll hits and wounds versus Slanesh units, which unfortunately, if you're Emperor's Children, there's really no way around that. If you're Black Legion, there's no way to take the Slanesh keyword off Abaddon. It's just one of those things where hopefully GW in 10th edition learns to kind of tone down the faction on faction specific tactics. So kind of give me a rating from 1 to 10. You're playing Black Legion or Emperor's Children, you see Drukhari on the other side of the table. How confident are you that you're going to win the game?
Black Legion?
Yeah.
I'd say a 7.
Okay.
I'm playing Emperor's Children, even though they have that strat to go against me.
Yeah.
If I got my Noise Marines and I got everything that I have in my head, I'd say 9, 10.
Yeah.
Emperor's Children.
Yeah, yeah, especially
even against the scary list.
Yeah, especially if we go first. People kind of forget this, but we do have a redeploy stratagem. And Drakari, again, raiders, they're big. The models sometimes they can be like behind a wall pretty easily, but they can't really stop being shot on kind of the wider angles often on a lot of boards. And Drakari, they do not want to get hit by noise marines. They do not want to get hit by redeploying Volkite contemptors. I mean, the damage I've gone against Drakari before, and on kind of less train heavy boards, I've knocked out like 4 raiders and their entire contents knocked out, just doing like 700 or 800 points worth of stuff easily. Yeah, Emperor's Children have a great matchup. And I'm almost like feeling a little bad for them. Like, okay, you can have your reroll hits and wounds stratagem. Like, we'll still kill everything we see on the board.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, Drakari, I think cast Space Marines, we can handle them. We have a decent chance. Let's talk about the big internet boogeyman right now, Grey Knights. Now, have you had a chance to play against them in the last few weeks?
Yeah, I've actually played against them quite a few times in Warzone Houston and a couple RTTs. That there is actually a lot in my local meta.
Oh, cool.
And the way my list is set up, I'm not having any issues with them, just because my current list is, high toughness, and I put out a lot of damage with AP that just shreds the actual infantry, whether it's strike squads or their troops. And then, and by the very nature of those weapons, that also kills the Dread Knights. Like they're, I can,
yeah.
Actually, when I see the Dread Knights, I'm like, oh, this is actually going to be an easier match because I have less targets to kill. So where the infantry list, they can hide and things like that a little bit better. But ultimately, my Black Legion list is not struggling against them. So for me, when I play against Grey Knights, I'm looking at a 10 out of 10 against them. Where if I play Emperor's Children, I think that drops down to a 5 or a 6, because a lot of the good weapons that you have against Grey Knights are, their power army, and you're lacking AP, and unless you're able to get into melee with them. So
no, that's a really interesting point, because Grey Knights, as you say, they do have all these high saves. So things like Noise Marines, again, against like 3-up saves like Knights, they're just utterly destructive. Against Red Knights, especially because, again, for whatever reason, Dread Knights are actually pretty darn cheap per point for their level of toughness. Noise Marines aren't great. Volkite Contemptors, again, great in any 3-up saves, not as great there. But I know your list, again, you've talked about running the last cannon specifically, get that high AP, which I think is brilliant. In terms of the Grey Knights matchup, I've always loved a Decimator with the Soul Burners and Demon Forge. Good, clean fun. Like averages like 8 or 9 mortal wounds just across the board. It's beautiful. Are you still running your Decimator with the Soul Burners, or kind of have Grey Knights made you shy away? Just because I do get the feel no pain.
So previous to Grey Knights, actually, I think it was the Sisters that turned me off, because they have that one chapter that does the same thing as Grey Knights, the 5-up, and then they can boost it to a 4-up and all that. I actually was running 3 Decimators up to that point. I had Decimators with Soul Burners and a Claw, and that's where I was like, okay, I've got to change. I've got to get some AP, and all these people blocking mortal wounds now. I've got to do something, and that's where the Contemptors from, that already had the last cannons on from a long time ago. I was like, perfect. I'm going to do it this way. I know I'm going to get made fun of on the internet for having last cannons instead of Volkites, but I think in the end, that's really worked out for me. But I still have one. And the reason why I still have one is because he's so fast, and like every time I take him out of the list and try to find something to replace that last one with, it throws off the synergy in my list. So what I use him a lot for is to get in position where I really can't get in position with nobody else, because he has a base movement of 9 inches. He's got an assault weapon. So the Soul Burners are assault, which a lot of people forgot about this stratagem because they read the top of the stratagem and they go, oh, this doesn't matter anymore. So the stratagem is don't take the penalties for moving and shooting heavy weapons with a vehicle. So people stop reading. And you got to read the blah, blah, blah. You got to read the blah, blah, blah. For 1 command point, basic Chaos Space Marine stratagem, you can ignore the penalty for assault weapons on a vehicle. So with the Decimator, 9 plus D6, 2 command points, Demon Forge, ignore the penalty for advancing and shooting. And now you're in position to get those last couple mortal wounds somewhere. It's a stratagem that everybody has forgot about because half of it's built into every vehicle now.
Yeah.
But that second part, I think getting that, you know, you're getting able to get, the decimator is great for that point. And that's helped me in so many games because everybody thinks, okay, I'm way over here, I'm fine. But a decimator with an advance and then still being reliable with those two command points, it's worked out great for me. And that's the part that I lose every time I take him out of the list is how fast the decimator moves. So even though he's not as effective against Grey Knights, but where the list that I need help with, like Dark Eldar, I still have that one unit that I can advance and get to an objective, and then he kills the heck out of Dark Eldar. So So he's not as effective against some of these units, but you know, if I want a vehicle that's toughness 7 that I can run to an objective and still throw out a couple mortal wounds that'll get through, he's the guy. So and so a lot of times when I play against Grey Knights or another power army like that, I'll save him for last. That way I can see where I failed and then see if I can get off those last couple wounds with the decimator.
Yeah, no, that's, I gotta say, I love that. I'll be honest, I didn't even know the second part of that stratagem existed. So that is fantastic to hear. And I will say, actually, funny enough, as a cast player, a lot of our shooting into Death Guard and Thousand Suns is kind of ineffectual, just like things like Noise Marines, because they have so many 2-up saves and -1 damage. So having, ironically, like mortal wounds are amazing in Chaos mirror matchups. So it does make a lot of sense. And I love that the Decimator is still doing work for you. I don't know about you, but the actual Decimator model, like, it looks a little goofy, but I don't know. It has such like a 40K charm to it in a sense. I don't know. But yeah, awesome unit.
The model, I think that the cool thing about the model is the base size. It has a regular Dreadnought base size.
Yeah.
So the way I play hide and seek at the beginning of the game to try to eliminate alpha strikes, because of his tiny little base, I can actually hide him in a lot of squirrely places and still get that advance and get him in position early on. So, you know, yeah, but I love him. I love him.
That's fantastic.
I like having 3, but you know, 3 is too many. 1's just right.
Yeah, because ultimately, like 3, it's a whole investment. You have to bring Master Possession, and then there's some matchups where you just mortal wounds are not very good, as you mentioned. So yeah, I think 1 is a perfect sweet spot. Plus, again, I know you're big on using strategic reserves on like maps you can't hide a lot of stuff. Even in matchups where you can hide a lot of the stuff, it's 9 power level. I was running 1 in Emperor's Children for a while just to get some mortal wounds in there. And it's just good, clean fun. Just 1 CP, strategic reserves, come down, Demon Forge, just take over a section of the board. Great unit. I wish it was a little cheaper because I think it's 180 with the mortal wounds. A little bit pricey, but again, it's kind of hard to replace.
Mm-hmm. And the one thing that I love about the Decimator is because people that are familiar with the Soul Burners, he terrifies people. He's scary looking and he terrifies people. And people will not go somewhere because that Decimator's there. And what I always tell people, is he really that scary? I'm going to do maybe, if I don't have Demon Forge, because I'm using Demon Forge on, you know, the Lower Skulls. Yeah. But maybe you're going to do 3 or 4 wounds to you. I mean, how many other units that cost 180 points are only going to do 3 or 4 wounds to you? I mean, most of them are doing a lot more than that.
Yeah.
But everybody's scared of him. And I think just that fear of him makes him worth his points.
Yeah. No, and
when you tell somebody 2-up mortal wounds, it gets in people's heads real quick.
Yeah. No, I've told people that before, like, because again, I don't like gotcha stuff, so I'll kind of go over my stuff at the start of the game. I'll say, this guy shoots mortal wounds, and they'll be like, what? Like, what kind of broken thing is this? Like, gosh, Chaos always gets all sorts of broken combo stuff. And again, just he'll kill 3 or 4 guardsmen. They're like, there's counterplay to him. But again, the psychological effect is huge. And the funny thing is, kind of, if you just took for his points 2 90-point sorcerers, on average over the course of a game, I suspect they would do more mortal wounds combined. But again, just the effect it has on the game, with the speed and kind of it's pretty durable too. You know, T7, 5-up invul, you know, nothing to be sneezed at. Definitely has a big effect on the game. So again, just to tie things back to talking about the Grey Knights matchup, I guess kind of what's your game plan there? Because it sounds like you want to hide and then just shoot everything that exposes itself. Um, the issue for me with Grey Knights is on missions where they have 2 or 3 secondaries near their deployment zone, they just have an auto like 15 on that secondary they have that's like just do psychic tests on objectives. So I kind of feel the need to go ahead and like I feel the pressure to make things happen, if that makes sense. Um, like the games you've been winning against Grey Knights, how do those games generally go?
Even where they have the secondaries on their side of the board, can't hide from the lower skulls. You
Yeah.
come and they really don't have the tools to. The only thing they really have that's effective is the one psychic thing. Vortex of Doom does the 2d3 mortal wounds. Other than that, they're shooting bolters at you, or strength 5 stuff, and they're just not doing enough wounds. And anything like, because it's strength 8 -2 2 damage on the big gun, and then on my and I switched to the 3 damage gun on the chest gun. Just murders everything that's Grey Knights. So, and then you just have the las cannons that sit back and support him. So anything that pops out in the open, I clean off full 5-man units. So it's just there. I've just got too much high strength, high AP weapons in my army. So any power armies like that my army doesn't struggle with them. Where my Emperor's Children was definitely struggled with them. So I think it's one of those,
Yeah.
Always trade. I would not want to play Grey Knights with my Emperor's Children. But like when I'm playing Black Legion, I'm, I hate to say it this way, I'd almost feel like a free win in most cases against Grey Knights.
Russell, I'm just going to say right now before we keep going, I love your confidence. I really wish more Chaos Space Marine players, because I feel there's this negativity. There's this general vibe of like, oh, GW's ignored us. We can't compete in 9th. And again, just play the matchups. People go out there. I guarantee you, it's not as bad as you think it is. Just focus on what you can control. You'll get some wins. And as you say, Grey Knights, super scary, like interceptors. They hit really hard. They still die like intercessors. In fact, they actually die easier than intercessors because they're transhuman. I think it's 2 CP instead of 1. So like, again, if you can kill intercessors, you can kill Grey Knights. The 4-up invulns on their Dread Knights, not great. But again, there's no -1 damage. So a lot of guns that like against like a Dread Knight list wouldn't be that effective are super effective into Grey Knights. And yeah, again, Abhor the Witch, if you don't have a Psyker, which I love that your list doesn't, because you have Abaddon already, he has the full hit rerolls to make stuff reliable. You'll rack up some points against them. That's for sure. Yeah. Cool. So we've covered.
They're easy to pick secondaries against, especially since I took out the Psyker. And so yeah. I think I'm, where most people fear Grey Knights more than they fear Thousand Sons, I feel like I'm the opposite way, because I feel like Thousand Sons do have a lot more mortal wound output and a lot more reliability psychic phase. So they have in bones. So I'm more confident in killing Grey Knights, where I'm not so much with Thousand Sons.
No, that's absolutely fantastic. So we've covered Drukhari, you're pretty confident. We've covered Grey Knights, you're really confident. Let's talk AdMech post FAQ, because I've played a couple of games against them, only on TTS, not in person. In my opinion, they're still really, really good. I think a lot of AdMech players that weren't that great kind of will be exposed now that they're no longer playing with like 300 points more than everyone else. No offense to anyone. How do you feel about the AdMech matchup now?
The more vehicle heavy list I like playing. But the one with the 20 Scutari Rangers, still, they're so good. So good. And then you just got to hide from them and then hit them hard and hope they fail leadership. So you're not going to kill all of them, even with all your shooting. So I do like the Cyclone missile launchers, because at least they get max shots on those units with the blast profiles. But outside of that, it's luckily I haven't had to play too much AdMech, but I've had good luck against AdMech when I have played them. So now Drukhari is my boogeyman, and Death Guard. Death Guard is always my scary. Yeah. I don't like getting matched against Death Guard.
Hold up. I'm going to entirely derail this train of thought. Talk to me about Death Guard, because I think it's the first time I've heard in a while that like Death Guard is my boogeyman. Can give me your thoughts there?
Death Guard is they play a lot like the way I like my army. They just do it better because it's army wide. I think one thing that helps my army is damage reduction. Abaddon reduces wounds in half. I have 3 dreadnoughts that all reduce wounds by 1. The decimator's scary, so he gets focused on a lot, instead of my dreadnoughts, which only make them more survivable, even though they're the ones doing all the damage. And then the Lord of Skulls soaks up so many wounds, but when I shoot Lord of Skulls into, like for example, when I shoot Grey Knights, Lord of Skulls just removes entire units.
Oh yeah.
Lord of Skulls shoots a group of Plague Marines. There's still a couple left when I'm done shooting because of the damage reduction. Same thing when you start talking about last cannons, damage reduction on last cannons. Ouch, especially when it's a Plague Burst crawler, and they have those 12 wounds. So, Death Guard just take away all the things that make my army good. Even like Angel's Bane. Angel's Bane is 3 damage against Imperium, 2 damage against everybody else, only 1 damage.
1 damage. Yeah.
Death Guard. Now I get Death to the False Emperor against Death Guard, so I'd love to get Abaddon. Abaddon's gonna have so much fun.
Oh yeah.
So he might not be my emergency guy anymore. He might be my like a real beat stick now in the games that aren't Imperium games. But the best thing about Abaddon is because he's so hard to kill. Nobody wants to come close to him, and if people do come close to him, he eats them. So now, so not to get back on the Abaddon talk, but yeah, Death Guard is the one I struggle the most with. Like one of the top Texas players is Joni. He's from Dallas. He played Death Guard for a long time, and I'm glad to see him playing Thousand Suns. He's doing extraordinary with Thousand Suns.
Sure.
Don't get me wrong, but there's no way I could beat his Death Guard list with Black Legion. It was just, and you know how much confidence I have on a lot of things. But Death Guard's always been Death Guard is.
Yeah, I will say this actually, just to not to get too far in the fluff, but actually in the Black Legion books, I remember Abaddon versus a Death Guard warband was kind of one of the main themes of the novels. It's really funny to hear that it ended up on the tabletop, not going the Black Legion's way. Okay, so kind of to unsidetrack there, we covered Drukhari, we covered Grey Knights. Now we've covered Death Guard, we've covered AdMech. I want to quickly throw orcs in there because I know in Texas, just from kind of following on BCP, I see a lot of orcs down there. I think, I will say, just in general, I feel flyer lists were horrible for melee CSM lists. They were just horrible. They would completely move block us. The damage was really hard to avoid. Orcs went from one of my most hated matchups to now I'm actually kind of looking forward to them with Emperor's Children. Because Noise Marines are just really good into like the biker lists now we're seeing. What are your thoughts on orcs kind of playing against orcs post the data slate?
I think the jury's going to be out on that one until people readjust, because I think there's a lot of people that run the meta and they went out and bought a bunch of buggies and now their whole list is invalid, and I think they'll move on. But the people that are going to stick with orcs, I think, are going to end up with better lists, because they're going to have more diversity in the vehicles. They're still going to end up with the same amount of vehicles as they had before. It's just going to be more diversity. I think you're going to look at a list that's more similar to the one that won SoCal. If you look at his list, he'd already had a crazy amount of different variety of these vehicles. So is the speed wad done? No, I think it's actually going to get better because they're going to be more diversified, and they're going to have more on the ground because they're going to have 2 less flyers in the air. 2 to 3 less flyers in the air. So I think orcs are actually going to end up better. The ones that stick around and find ways to win with them, I almost be willing to bet. Give it a month or 2, and you're going to see orcs doing better than they were pre FAQ.
No, that's really interesting to hear. Because at kind of a first glance, everyone kind of gravitated towards the few obvious units, which everyone knows by now. No point going over them. But there's a surprising amount of depth to the codex, because one of my best friends is an orc player and kind of bounced lists around. I think the bikers are like 25 or so points. I don't remember exactly, but 3 wounds, innate -1 to hit, high toughness. They're fantastic. The little helicopters are just so good. And for some reason, they also got one of those strats. I don't know if you saw it. They have the strat now to kind of like AdMech have to leave at the end of the turn. That's always super frustrating to play against. and Killer Rigs are just, again, they're kind of like Dread Knights, you know? There's counterplay, but they're playing with, they're basically getting a huge discount on points. So yeah, Orcs definitely still something to fear. So I guess your list, it killed Orcs very well before. They'll still kill Orcs very well. So I guess it's just a good reminder to not ignore Ramshackle, still make it a consideration. Make sure you don't only have things like Volkite Contemptors that will get hit hard in case you run into one of those lists. So that's really interesting. So I guess we've covered, oh, sorry, we about to say something?
Man, that feedback.
No, I will just say for the record, actually, it sounds crystal clear on my end. So
okay, great.
It's coming through well.
So I think the Orc players that stick around are going to be extraordinary and they're going to do well.
Yeah.
So in other words, the ones that stick with it and find new ways to win, and it's going to work, and it's going to work great.
Yeah.
You know? And then of course it'll snowball because people are going to, you know, gravitate back to it. I do think that Orcs are still there. I think Drukhari is still there. Maybe not so much Admech. I think there's still a lot of play with Admech. But like Orcs and Drukhari are still there. And I really think Drukhari is just that. I mean, that, you know, like if I know I'm going to lose a game, it's either going to be Drukhari or Death Guard.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not saying I could lose against anybody, you know. Actually, I lose against Emperor's Children. You know, I think you put that into consideration. I think Emperor's Children is an A-tier army at this point, especially if it's built the right way. And I don't think I can beat it. Like I know Jorg over here in Houston, who's a brilliant player. He's going to be a monster with Emperor's Children.
Yeah,
that's the False Emperor.
No, that makes complete sense. So, okay, quick hot take from Russell, current #1 CSM player. If every Legion played head-to-head, basically like a round-robin tournament, so you see Emperor's Children kind of winning the like inner CSM tournament?
Yes. I think it's gonna. Oh man, that's hot take. So
yeah, I love hot takes.
Of course, Black Legion, of course. No, I think Emperor's Children has the highest potential to do. Yeah, Emperor's Children has the best toolkit, hands down.
No, that makes complete sense.
But if you love your army enough, you can make it work with Black Legion. You just gotta sell your soul to the Dark Gods.
Absolutely. Feel the power of chaos undivided. Mm-hmm. So I love that you have a game plan for every single one of the major boogeymen. Oh, hold up. I realized I forgot one actually. Tyranids. So I've played against Tyranids a couple times now post Octarius. And I will just say this. I feel bad for longtime Tyranids players. Because all the units they want to love, like Carnifex is just still a complete joke, unfortunately. Flying Hive Tyrants, only strength 6 for some reason, still really bad. Hive Guard, they give me such headaches. I played against a friend the other day. He was running a unit of, it wasn't even that bad a list. It was just like 6 Hive Guard and a bunch of the Devil Gaunts. I went first. No, he went first. And straight up, first activation, 1 unit of Hive Guard just picked up a Keeper of Secrets from across the board. I was like, this is going to be a long game. Ended up winning for the record because I was playing Night Lords and kind of move blocked him a lot and stopped him from falling back and shooting me the rest of the game. What are your thoughts on Tyranids now and kind of how Chaos Space Marine players can counter them?
I think Emperor's Children, Night Lords, Word Bearers, I think all 3 of those do really well against them. I do think I am definitely going to struggle against them with the way my list is built, you know, because the only thing that's going to help me is the Hive Guard is not going to be able to hurt the Dreadnoughts as easy as it does like the Decimator. Decimator will disappear to Hive Guard. But you know, with the the way the GW awesome terrain is going to be, Hive Guard can pretty much be protected the entire game.
Yeah,
you gotta get through a wall of gaunts, and they're going to shoot twice, and they're going to hurt everything. So and so at that point you go, oh, I'll play the objective game. But it's hard to play the objective game when there's 120 of anything that really are not affected. That like the leadership, they don't have a leadership issue. So
yeah, you
know, where that's where like at least with Admech, I could kill 10 of them and hopefully they'll fail leadership, or they'll have to spend a couple command points. You know, but with them, it's Yeah, so the jury's out on that one for my list, but I think Emperor's Children definitely have the tools to chew through the gaunts with Noise Marines. I mean, especially if you've got a max out unit of Noise Marines, you could kill 120 gaunts, it feels like, in one turn.
Oh yeah.
So I mean,
Oh yeah.
maybe 120 is too much, but I mean, you could kill a ton with you know, and then you just gotta then you gain board control after that, and then the Hive Guard can kill whatever they want. But yeah, I think with my list, I'm definitely going to struggle against that. I know there's at least one guy in Texas. His name's Sean. He's from San Antonio. And I know he's probably licking his chops to play me. I'm going to have to tell him to watch his video now. So. But yeah, he's already messaged me a couple times. He's like, you're beating everybody else in Texas. Get ready. Because when I get a hold of you in Austin, I'm like, and he's right. He's a really good Tyranid player.
No, for sure. Yeah, and Tyranids, they're a super high skill cap faction.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of great players have been kind of grinding away, and with all these new tools, can be super dangerous. I guess I'll just quickly jump in and just kind of give a few words of advice against Tyranids, because I've played them a few times, not to you, obviously, to kind of the wider cast-based Marine collective.
I'll take it. I'm going to Austin, and I'm probably going to play in game 1.
Yeah, so I've been playing a current list, which is a mix of Slaanesh Demons and Night Lords. I think I sent it over quickly. A lot of Jump Pack Night Lords and a lot of Slaanesh with a lot of the Fiends and Keepers of Secrets and Be'lakor, because no reason to play demons without Be'lakor these days. And the good thing about Tyranids is their shooting's incredible. And Gene Stealers hit really hard in melee. But they're kind of like Guard in the sense of they have a lot of units that are completely non-combat threatening. Like unit of shooty gaunts, I don't remember if it's Termagants or Hormagaunts, but whatever the ones take the Devourers. Their shooting's fantastic. In melee, they have one strength 3 or 1 strength 4 attack each, completely non-threatening, no AP. Their Hive Guard, if you can tag them, they have like 2 attacks each, hidden on 4s or something, super weak. Any sort of combat traps can be game winning against them, because most Tyranid lists are really light on melee these days. So something like Night Lords, just have a unit of Warp Talons come in, they'll pick up like 15-20 gaunts, kind of tag something. It's fantastic. And actually their leadership is really low all across the board, which is not an issue because most people know this, Synapse ignores morale. But Night Lords are reliably proccing per round the week for +1 to hits. You're getting exploding 5s in melee. Slaanesh Fiends that can advance and charge everywhere and just touch a unit of gaunts. Especially, and look for opportunities to prevent fallback, not just to stop shooting, but also help them move block themselves. Like I played against a Tyranid's player and he had a unit of gaunts, he ran up on objective that was in line in front of his army. I was like, perfect, no problem at all. 1 unit of Fiends ran up, tagged him. 1 unit of Fiends, like 4 attacks, because I specifically left the second one out of an inch, so I only got 4 attacks and don't want to kill too many. Comes on in, it's going to kill 1 or 2, that's fine. You've now tagged the unit that's in front of their entire army, which is kind of blocking them in, because they can't fall back, so they can't even move at all on the ends. So just kind of look for opportunities. Anything that prevents fallback is really good in the Tyranids. I mean, if we had yeah, it was a beautiful thing. You had like this little wall of like gaunts. I was like, perfect. Okay, I'll stay behind this wall. You stay in front of this wall, and we'll just play the game. All the objectives are on my side. I'm very happy. We'll spend a turn like this. And things like or for example, Emperor's Children we talked about. With excessive violence, you're coming in. You're hitting on 3s, 6s explode, and you're making additional attacks. Almost all hitting, almost all wounding. They don't really have invulns on their hordes like the way like demons do or other horde armies often do. So you're getting a bunch of attacks, even like a unit of 3 Terminators to come in and just do devastating damage to a gaunt list. So yeah, and just accept you're going to lose stuff to Hive Guard. Anything that isn't tagged that turn. Like I was fortunate I was able to tag a bunch of things. Anything that's not tagged is again super in danger. Unfortunately, Hive Guard are a bit busted. But yeah, just kind of build around combat trapping where you can. Or just again, as mentioned, they are pretty weak to shooting. Volume shooting still pretty good. Yeah, just a few kind of tips. But yeah, it's an uphill matchup. Just because Hive Guard just put you so far on the back foot. If they've invested in 12 to 18, if you go second, there's unfortunately a chance you just lose too much. Unless you're really, really good with your like trapping and fight phase movement after that, which is why I'm actually looking into Night Lords as kind of my main legion going forward. But yeah, it's a tough matchup. I know we like our hot takes here, Russell. give me a hot take on a scale from 1 to 10 versus Tyranids. How confident are you?
I think against 70% of Tyranid players, I'm going to say probably a 7 or 8, and the other 30%, I'm going to say a 4. So, I mean, yeah. So,
yeah,
it's gonna be tough, and I hope that I have enough shots and Death to the False Emperor on Abaddon to get me through it. And then it'll take a little bit of luck, but just confidence in what my list does, and not changing my game plan too much to, like you said, I think one of the biggest things is accepting that the Hive Guard is going to hit you hard, but they'll run low on CP, so they won't become as effective. And then the other thing is who cares what they kill on turn 4 or 5 if you've got the rest of the board under control. So at a certain point, it doesn't matter what they kill on turn 5. So if you get to the point in the game where you're late game, then just let the Hive Guard do what they're going to do and focus on killing other things, because a lot of time the Hive Guard are going to be too protected and too behind a wall of everything to get to. So if you try to swing for the fences on them, you're going to miss. So deal with what you can deal, and just know that you're going to get hit with the Hive Guard.
Yeah, no, that makes complete sense. And kind of, again, Tyranids are a great example of just being able to, I feel there's kind of like some fundamentals that have kind of been lost as 9th edition goes along. But like look for things like an opportunity to combat trap, like a unit of gods like stretching out at the end, just grab a few of those guys. Again, there's Desperate Breakout, 2 CP, it's unfortunate. But again, Tyranids, they go through CP like candy. Make them spend 2 CP to fall back out of a wrap early. That's a huge crippling to their game plan. Gene Stealers end up anywhere. Good old-fashioned screen with cultists, it's still a thing. And then your Tyranid fundamentals, like again, looking for chances to kind of layer guys within 3 inches so they can't use overrun to kind of move again after they charge you. And just things like that. Yeah, again, it's a tough matchup. I would say, again, in my opinion, probably the worst matchup for Chaos Space Marines right now, but still winnable, Just focus on your fundamentals, things will work out. Out of all the other factions, do you have any other kind of bad matchups that you're worried about?
I think Death Guard, Dark Eldar, and reminding me about Tyranid. Those are probably.
Do any of the kind of the not top tier armies are like spoilers for you, or you just at this point you've played them all enough that you have a plan?
Maybe it sounds crazy, but maybe Gene Stealer Cult, or they have so many tricks. I think a lot of people, I think it just like CSM. I think a lot of people hate on them, but I mean, I've got a friend here in Houston. He does great with his Gene Stealer Cult. Every time he goes to,
that's awesome.
He does it really well. 4-1 things like that. So I mean, like, I think, but no, I think there's certain lists that you've got to respect. I'm, just like, when you can't be too overconfident with the Death of the False Emperor, because if you don't deploy conservative against Tyranids, they're going to eat you. Same thing with Blood Angels or Black Templar. Just because you're better in melee combat now, you want to be the one charging, but if you don't deploy conservatively enough, Blood Angels can jack you up, which I've played enough of those. I feel confident in countering them. But it's still Drukhari that I'm, Drukhari and those 3.
Yeah.
And I hope I'm a little bit better against Death Guard now. But yeah.
Yeah. And I will say, as long as you have the Decimator in there, they always have to hide their Terminators, because the Decimator can just easily pick up 3 Death Shroud Terminators or whatever, and kind of instantly, like in one turn, just swing the game if they get even a little bit sloppy, because as you mentioned, that threat range is always going to be scary. Cool. So before you go, I just kind of want to talk about a few like general principles for any Chaos Space Marine players that are excited about this FAQ, want to kind of get back into competitive play, are kind of having trouble writing lists. You kind of have like, okay, say a Chaos Space Marine player says like, hey, Russell, I'm excited, I want to get back into playing tournaments. Do you just have any like general words of advice for Chaos Space Marine players, like such as, for example, maybe like leave out the Psychers if you can, because the Grey Knights match up, or just any like units like you think are near includes in certain styles of list?
I think Terminators, bikes, possessed. I think if you want to go the infantry route, those are 3 units that I think all have play, multiple wounds, good toughness. If you've got ways to reduce the damage, or like a dark apostle, making them -1 to hit and things like that.
Yeah.
You know, if you're going to go infantry, you got to find ways to keep them survivable, which means character support. But CSM has some really good character support with buffs, so it definitely can be done. And then there's your other route where you either can look at a demon engine list, or, you know, looking at dreadnoughts, because they do reduce damage, you know, by 1. Now they're Forge World, but I mean, but you're gaining the same toughness that make Death Guard good when you do something like that. And that's ultimately the reason why I went with the list that I went with, is because I realized wounding something that's toughness 7 or better is hard to do. But when it happens, it can be brutal if you lose too many of them too fast. Like when I was running 3 decimators. So like, kind of to circle back where we were earlier on decimators, 1 decimator can be great. 3 is a detriment to your list. So you have to find a balance and synergy no matter what you do. You know, so and don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. You may, like, because I'm telling you, the list that I'm running right now, when I pull one thing out, the list is nowhere near as good. So find the units you love playing and find ways to make them work. There's no right or wrong way to play any army in 40K. And I think especially with Chaos, you don't have to do it like the internet tells you to do it. So read the codex, flip back and forth. You know, there's you know, just like I was talking to some Necron players, they're like, oh, those core buffs aren't that great. And I said, well, have you picked up the book and then reread your codex with the new changes in mind? And they're like, no, I haven't. And then, you know, I'm like, well, think about this and teleporting destroyers, shooting destroyers. And they're like, oh, yeah. And so I think take a fresh look at your codex, flip the pages, read everything, even the ones that you're like, this is a garbage stratagem, it doesn't work anymore, like the one we talked about earlier with where no penalties to advance and shoot the vehicle if they have assault weapons. People pass over that stratagem all the time and never use it. And so just read the codex with the new changes in mind, not just this Chaos Space Marine changes, but everybody's changes. You know, you've got to kind of read the meta and try to predict where the meta is going to be if you're familiar with what everybody's playing and how things are going to change, and try to build your list towards that. And don't, like I said, play what you want to play and figure out ways to make it work, because that's really when it's going to be fun. Because if you net list, you know, results will vary. You know, I mean, so.
No, I think that's such a great note to end on. Again, this is not a general suggestion. This is literally a suggestion from Russell and I. Read your codex. I'm serious. Like, leave it somewhere. Could be, you know, in your bathroom. Could be by your bed. Somewhere you're going to, like, physically or on your phone or wherever you have a copy. Read through it. You're going to find things in there. You could play the army for a long time. You'll still be surprised to see. And that's how I ended up actually playing Word Bearers a few months ago. I was kind of heard they're really bad. I took a look. I was just blown away by like how good some of those relics and stratagems were. Again, and this is just a reminder that right now, anyone that can tell you like 100% certainty where the meta is going to be in a few months, no one can actually promise you exactly how it's going to go. Again, focus on what your army does well. Don't try to play the same game as better armies. Focus on what your army does well. Find some tips and tricks to build around, and just practice different matchups, and you'll find yourself winning some games. Russell, I think that, again, that's exactly what a lot of Chaos Space Marine players need to hear. And I'm looking forward in a few months seeing how things shake out. Hopefully we can talk again once your Black Legion continue to do beautiful things and Emperor's Children start taking a bunch of tournaments. And exciting time to be a Chaos player, which again, I would not have said like a month ago. I can say now with full honesty, I'm excited to be playing my Chaos Space Marines and see what the future holds.
Sure.
Awesome. Well, Russell, I just have to say, thanks so much for joining me. I mean, honestly, dude, in terms of like your insight in Chaos Space Marines, probably literally unmatched out there. Always a pleasure talking. Yeah, best of luck. Do we have any upcoming tournaments we'll see you at?
I'm going to GW Austin. To be honest, I'm a little worried with the terrain, the way it is and the way my list is built.
Yeah.
It's going to eliminate a lot of my shooting. It's going to favor a lot of the LR stuff. So, you know, we might be talking about how I went 2-4 or 2-6 or whatever it is at Austin, you know, in a couple of days. Yeah. But I'm going to Austin. I'm going to FLG New Orleans, and then I'm gonna cap it off at LVO, and then, you know, and I'm excited for Chaos Space Marines because there's like 5 or 6 of us that are all pretty close together. And I think how we do at LVO is going to decide who comes out on top of CSM, which is really cool because I feel like we have some excitement going within that top tier of CSM players, which, you know, hey, that's awesome.
Yeah, Russell, off you all the credit for ending up #1 now. I'm actually a little salty myself, just because I started a new job recently, haven't been able to travel to any large tournaments. But as you say, LVO's, you know, a huge deciding factor. And again, whether it's me, you, any of the other great Chaos players out there, I just want to see a lot of Chaos players doing well. And fingers crossed we all get it done for the Dark Gods.
Yep, absolutely. And I hope we can all get a picture together at LVO.
For sure, we can get a picture, we can grab a beer, and we'll be shaking hands at the final table. Fingers crossed.
That's right.
Awesome, Russell. Well, as always, dude, thanks so much for talking to me. Absolute pleasure to have you on at Warphammer, and look forward to talking in the future. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
You too. Take care.
Take care.